Hey Hannah.
Hi Andy, how are you?
Yeah, not bad.
Amazing. How was the panel discussion?
I think it went fine, actually. I don't know, really. It's difficult to say when you're sort of on this side of the fence, but yeah, I think it went fine.
Good. Oh, amazing. Yeah, thanks so much for joining. I think we're going to wait a few minutes and then, hopefully some people will come across to our breakout session and that will give them a chance to ask you some questions. And we can kind of discuss a bit more about Nosto as well. So we'll just wait for a few more people to join. But yeah, I'd love to, I'm just going to start introducing now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's really lovely to see that we've already got some people joining with us at the moment. And I'd love for you just to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit more about what you do and in your role, and also what Nosto does as a company as well.
Okay. Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, we can absolutely go for it. Let's
Yep.
just jump right in. Yeah, we can see we've got some people here.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll repeat from the previous session. So my name's Andy Mallinson. I'm MD for Nosto in the UK Nordic region. And I've been with Nosto for 6-7 months. I came to Nosto as part of the acquisition of Stackler by Nosto. Stackler's a UGC platform, been around for a long time. So I worked for Stackler since pretty much the start. Sadly, not the very start, but certainly near the start. So I've come up through that kind of UGC world, and prior to that, most of my career I've spent actually on the marketing side of the fence. So CMO for various companies like Virgin, Fitness First, and things like that. So I've come from that marketing background. And Nosto, for those that don't know, so Nosto is an e-commerce experience platform. So what we really mean by that is it's about delivering relevant experiences based on you the individual, but also and your preferences, but also the kind of preferences of the retailer itself. So it's this kind of push pull of data. It's marrying what you want as a consumer with what the merchant wants, and our platform kind of sits over the top of platforms like Spotify Plus and Magento in order to deliver those experiences.
Amazing. Yeah, I can definitely obviously tell in recent months and throughout the pandemic, it's definitely been a shift in kind of focus towards just making sure that consumers obviously have more of a personalized experience. So it's super exciting obviously to see that development over the past year and obviously a few months as well. So I'm definitely going to encourage everyone who's on the call right now listening, please pop your questions in the chat for Andy, especially if you have any specifically about Nosto as well. I'll just make sure that throughout the session we can obviously go through these, and please feel free to kind of jump right in, share your screen. That's what we're here for. So amazing. I really love kind of the idea of Nosto and obviously what you've developed, and I've seen a lot of brands and a lot of case studies of yours that have done really successfully with the platform. So just so our audience can get a bit of a flavor as well, like what are your kind of favorite success stories that have happened with Nosto, just so people can get a grasp as to kind of what they can do with the platform.
So a lot of good success stories. I mean, just to give a little bit of sort of a background. So we primarily work with e-commerce merchants, high street names, everything from sort of Paul Smith to, as I mentioned before, sort of Dermalogica and Kapal and everything in between. And as I say, we help them kind of provide very relevant and authentic experiences to their audiences and to their customers. Probably, if I just take an example of a brand that's doing it well, I'll probably take something like Paul Smith, actually. So they deliver everything from product recommendations. So based on your preferences, either preferences that have been submitted or preferences that have been implied through, your visitation on the site. So recommendations around that, but not just recommendations just because I like kind of blue chinos and red jumpers or whatever it might be, but recommendations that are based on also what the merchant is looking. So do they category merchandise high margin products versus low margin products versus sale products versus low stock products, etc. So it's not just about delivering a perfect recommendation for a customer in terms of what they want, but it's also just in the same way as you might merchandise your sort of gondola end in a store of the products that you're trying to move. It's exactly the same way in with Nosto. It allows you to category merchandise, but it allows you to category merchandise to that individual. It's not just everyone walking in off the physical high street sees the same thing. To this, it's a kind of one-to-one relationship that you've got with that customer.
Mm-hmm. And just off the back of that, so we've had a question in the chat saying, how would you utilize personalization for brands that have got a very small product set and perhaps don't have a wide variety of merchandise on site?
Yeah, I mean, well, that definitely is a limitation, but it's I would say it's not just about the size of that, your SKU count, but it's about making sure, and maybe this is where sort of UGC comes in as well. Actually, it's quite often brands that have got a relatively small sort of product set but have got a really sort of passionate audience, then actually start collecting content and delivering content onto that site that shows authenticity, shows that type of thing. And I think it's not just about saying, well, if you like the look of this pair of trousers, you might also like the look of this pair of trousers. That's typically when you've got a big SKU count, right? But it's about delivering a more personalized experience, and maybe UGC's got a good role to play in that. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, I think what I've also found recently is the increase of kind of brands including lots of user-generated content, such as reviews, onto their site to really show kind of their loyal customer base, and hopefully also persuade new customers to buy their products if they've got really good ratings on them as well.
And actually, what you mentioned there is it's that cycle again that I talked about in the previous session. Is the more content that you can put on there that is authentic, it's from real people, from real customers who have bought that product, then the more engagement that you're going to get with that audience, and the more content that you're going to get. And we've actually within Nosto and the original Stackler platform, we've created almost a community portal where brands can actually start to engage with people who are regularly engaging with them, either on social or through their site, and you can actually start to encourage them to create content within that community for the brand. So it might feel like that's going down a sort of an influencer route, and in many ways it is, but we're not talking about Kim Kardashian here. We're talking about kind of you and me. So I didn't want to make any assumptions about you, Hannah. You might have 1 million followers for all I know. But,
definitely not.
I'm just short at the moment, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, I'm just around 100,000.
Right. Okay. So, but it's not just about sort of getting that content, but it's about engaging that audience as well, and creating that conversation and creating that experience once again, which drives the mean to the end to get loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely. I know social media is absolutely huge, and it is a great way to kind of make or break really a brand, especially. But we do actually have a relevant question to that in the chat, which says, what would be the most seamless way to leverage personalization and curation on social media channels?
So creating them on social media channels is well, okay. So one of the things that quite a number of our customers do. Most people think of user-generated content as being pure social media content, typically Instagram, that is then kind of reused as part of the brand. But actually, I think we need to think beyond just the traditional social media. So user-generated content is any type of content really that has been created by the consumer or the end user, and shared with the brand, or shared on social media, or shared anywhere. And I'll give you a good example, sort of perhaps not just on social media, but on just sort of general channels. So we've got brands. One of the brands that we work with in the US is called BRP. They're a kind of recreational vehicles products, everything from scooters to kind of scuba diving things. Don't ask me, it's beyond me. But what they did is that they actually encouraged people to share content, but in a personalized way. So they collected great imagery. B, they collected personalized data, so name, email address, so first party data that they were sharing. But thirdly, they created they shared stories. These were individual stories that people were sharing, that actually allowed the brand to let their customers tell their story. And that's what user-generated content is. It's about encouraging people to share, encouraging people to be unique. And that is a great way of being able to create great content. Now, of course, I think the question was originally around sort of using it on social media channels. You can do exactly the same. I mean, that's kind of what a hashtag is in many ways. It's about creating those stories online, and that sort of storytelling has been around for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially this links back to obviously what was discussed earlier, but obviously with the privacy updates and things, user-generated content is so important. So finding a way to stand out, such as success stories about the product and things like that, are really lovely. And I think it's also just content that customers like to enjoy reading as well. So yeah, definitely something to think about implementing too.
Yeah.
So in terms of going back to Nosto then, what are the benefits of using Nosto's products together, as well as opposed to different vendors as well? Like, what makes you stand out?
Yeah, it's a good question of whether you pair multiple sort of technologies together, or you're looking at a single platform. And if I'm perfectly honest, there are probably advantages, disadvantages of both. But certainly from my perspective, something like Nosto is a platform that has got many strings to its bows, whether that is product recommendations, email segments, A/B testing, category merchandising, user-generated content, as you would expect me to say from my history. All of those things. I guess the most beneficial thing of using a single platform is that those things operate together really well. And I'll use the example of something like category merchandising and UGC. If you combine those things together, then when you come to an online store, you're going to have a very different experience and be shown very different user-generated content than when I go to an online store. Once again, making big assumptions there, but do you see what I mean? In that user-generated content isn't just here's a bunch of our customers kind of wearing our clothes, or it's about here's a bunch of customers that are relevant to you as opposed to relevant to me. And you can drive that personalization and that very specific content, whether that's UGC or product shots or anything. You can drive that that is very specific to you personally. So I would say that's sort of one of the benefits of using a platform that is fully connected within it, rather than having to make multiple connections externally, some of which those connections will not work. User-generated content from another provider will not connect, with segmentation, or Nosto segmentation as an example. So that's why Stackler is so important there.
Amazing. And following on from that, so some of our listeners today may not have been kind of utilizing something similar to Nosto at the moment, or kind of user-generated content. So in order for kind of those businesses that aren't doing much personalization at the moment, where would be best to start for them? Like what point would you think is a good place to start, basically?
Yeah, I'd probably say, well, everything starts with, you know, a base level of segmentation. So that doesn't deliver an end result, but you've got to start with your segmentation. If you don't have that in place, you then can't layer on any sort of consumer facing benefits. But once you have that in place, I would probably say the most frequently used sort of first port of call, if you like, is probably product recommendations. So if you're looking at a certain product, it's going to deliver a set of other recommendations that it thinks that you might like, or it thinks that it wants to get rid of. So I would say that's probably the first place to start. Other things that you can layer on really easily on top of that are things like A/B testing. Really simple way just to constantly test, try, learn what works best, what doesn't work best. It's another really kind of low-hanging fruit that you can get into very quickly. Probably a more advanced thing to move on to from there is something like category merchandising, where you can start to prioritize what products are shown to what segments. So high margin versus low margin, in stock versus out of stock, in sale, out of sale, those types of things, and those type of advanced things give you exponentially sort of better return on investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just going back to the first point there, I definitely find myself on websites when I'm shopping, it's saying something similar to, oh, you will like these items after just seeing this one, and then I'll find myself going through them, clicking back and adding all of them to my cart. So
right,
yeah,
you go down a rabbit hole, don't you? And you suddenly realize I've forgotten actually why I've come to this website, but
literally, yeah, I've got everything in my basket and I'm thinking I only came for like a top or something.
How did I do that? Right.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely works because I've been sucked into that for sure. Amazing. Yeah. So I'm just looking in the chat. I know we've got a few questions. So Jason would like to know, he said, I'd love to leverage UGC more and I have several avenues to request it. My biggest issue has been the quality of UGC we've received in the past. Do you have any tips for those of us outside beauty/apparel to get higher quality UGC?
Yes, I do. It doesn't say what brand Jason comes from, does it? Or I'm guessing
no,
it doesn't.
he just says outside of beauty and apparel.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, probably a couple of things. One is.
He's just said wireless audio. There we go.
Wireless audio. Okay. All right. Yeah. Perfect. Probably the first thing I would say is, and this is a slightly flippant answer, but it's kind of embrace the imperfection of UGC for starters. So user-generated content is not meant to be perfect. That's why you do, amazing studio photo shoots and things like that. You get, the aesthetic is perfect. The authenticity of user-generated content is the important thing. Now, I appreciate that that's probably not what Jason was really sort of talking about, because there's a lot of poor quality user-generated content out there. There's a lot of poor quality social posts, etc. But there is a level where actually it's as much about the authenticity of it as it is about the fact that it's a great photo. Okay, so I'll put that out there first. Getting past that, I would say one thing, and this probably is relevant to Jason, is he's going to have a lot of passionate, loyal followers, and I mentioned earlier in the previous session, I can't remember which one it was, but around building up community of content creators. And so as soon as you do that, as soon as you engage with that audience and actually reach out and ask for submissions, ask for content, you might want to reward them. You might not want to reward them. You certainly don't need to. But if you do, it's a micro reward. It's a 10% off type reward. We're not talking about 100 quid for a photo type thing. And as soon as you can build that community and then you start to engage with them, and our platform allows you to reach out to that community or a segment of that community, so you can segment that as well. And you can start sending them almost briefs to say, hey, we'd love to see, your favorite shot of, this in a, I don't know, an outdoor mountain setting, or in a Christmas setting, or whatever environment you want that in. And you can start to proactively have conversations with that community. And what tends to happen with that is that you dial down the quantity and you dial up the quality, and you definitely get a much higher level of UGC through that channel. But hopefully that answered your question, Jason. Sorry, I can't see the chat.
That's okay. Thank you so much. So yeah, he said thank you. Thanks, Jason, for asking a question. If anyone has any more for Andy, please drop it in the chat. Yeah, the floor is yours. So I've got a question. So obviously with 2021 and the privacy updates and things like that, that's obviously been a major talking point in the e-commerce community. So have you noticed a massive impact on the privacy updates implemented last year, and how that's implemented or affected Nosto in any way?
Actually, the short answer is no, not at all. And really this comes down to, there's a quite a big misconception around the privacy changes, because the privacy changes really only affect third-party data, so on third-party cookies, which actually Nosto doesn't use at all. So Nosto only uses data and insights from the retailer, i.e. first party, and that's either being gathered by that retailer through the customer, providing them with preferences. Typically that would be called zero-party data, or through traveling around the site and the various behavioral data and behavioral insights that you get from as they move around the site. So we only work with that. So the third party opt-out hasn't really had an effect on Nosto or its UGC side of things at all.
Yeah, have you seen any kind of increase in brands coming to Nosto with more strategies, alternative, and is that being a trend that you found as well?
Yeah, and a good trend. It goes back to the very original discussions that were going on around. These changes have become an opportunity or a necessity even for loyalty. So you've got to be more relevant with consumers. You've got to find ways to engage with them and reward them for that engagement. And once again, reward does not have to be points or dollars off or anything. Relevancy is a currency. Relevancy actually means a lot to consumers, and they might not even mean it, but they might come away from an experience which is saying, actually, I felt like that actually meant something to me. It felt like it was relevant to me. That is currency in my mind.
Yeah, I think it just brings it back to the feeling of community as well, feeling involved in a brand and its values. It definitely speaks volumes as well. And I found myself doing this in previous, when I've perhaps liked a pair of sports leggings. I would go out of my way to give a good review because you don't come across them very often, things like that, for the kind of exercise I do. So I can absolutely relate to that. I do have another question actually in the chat. So we've got one that says, what's a good way to use Nosto to acquire customers without a high cost per acquisition?
Okay, so I mean, Nosto is, I guess, less known for sort of customer acquisition. The only thing I would say is by making that experience relevant when a new customer comes on the site. So a new customer coming aboard, or they're not even a customer yet, they're a kind of, let's call them a prospect for a second, a potential customer. You start building a picture and insights of that potential customer from the moment they land on your site. So start building up that knowledge of that customer, start following them around site, start seeing what they're looking at. And immediately you will start to be able to deliver a more relevant experience to that customer, which doesn't therefore require a high cost per acquisition. But you, of course, have to get them to the site in the first place, which is not necessarily kind of where Nosto jumps in, but certainly kind of once you get them there, you can start delivering those relevant experiences straight away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Thank you so much, Andy, for answering those questions. Is there a place where people watching can perhaps reach you if they have any follow-up questions after the call, that they can get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach me directly at andy.mallinson@nosto.com. You can go to the website, which, as you might imagine, is nosto.com, and you can connect with us there. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, and
obviously,
and even is anyone not there?
I don't think anyone is anymore.
No. And of course, even at info@nosto.com as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining. I think now you can head back to the main stage. I think there's a Kahoot kind of quiz going on over there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hannah.
And thank you, Andy, for joining as well. It's been lovely to get to know you a bit more and information about Nosto too.
Likewise. Thanks so much, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.